Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome. And today we have two wonderful speakers, as usual, a part of Dr. Hegde's group. And the first speaker's name is Mamatha Shankar. Mamatha ji got her BTech and Masters from REC Suratkal and worked abroad in the US for about 14 years as a database analyst in a financial company. She is a part of Param Vedantha group led by Dr. Timmappa Hegde. And a very warm welcome to Dr. Roopa Suresh as well, who completed her MBBS at KIMS, Bangalore in 1995. She underwent further training in the US in internal medicine, MD, at the State University of New York, Stony Brook. And she has a fellowship in geriatric medicine, which is quite interesting. So it might be useful for many of us here. And she has served as a faculty in the Department of Geriatrics in the State University of New York until 2005. She is currently the Assistant Managing Director and Senior Consultant in Geriatrics at the Excel Care Hospital here in Bangalore. And she is dedicated to providing high-quality ethical care to all. And she has a national and international publications to her credit. She is a student of Param Vedantha Group since 2018 under the guidance of Dr. Timmappa Hegde, renowned neurosurgeon, for whom we are really grateful for arranging this series of Bhagvadgita Satsangs. Over to you, Hegde ji.
Thank you very much.
Ramesh, it's over to you, Dr. Hegde.
Thank you very much, Sajani and Ramesh, for this opportunity for us to study the Bhagavad Gita once again in our attempt to make summaries of each of these chapters. Today, we have two very committed students who are now playing the role of teachers, Mamatha Shankar and Dr. Roopa Suresh. And also, we have one of the most wonderful chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which can change our whole orientation to what meditation is. This chapter is titled Dhyana Yoga, and here we will understand what is Vedantic meditation. In meditation, as per Vedanta, there are two categories. One is called Upasana. Upasana is when you focus on a certain mantra and you keep repeating that. Any form of mental activity on a particular mantra or a deity forms an Upasana. But when the teacher gives you spiritual wisdom, a very profound wisdom like Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, Mahavakya Ayam Atma Brahma, your true nature is divine. And when this message is given to you, the student gets the message. It is like adding a sweetener to your drink. But unless you stir it and unless it goes to every cell or every part of your drink, to every cell of your body, it would not make a difference. So that is what is called Vedantic meditation. I think the opening speaker will be Dr. Roopa. Dr. Roopa, please.
Good evening to everybody. I think Mrs. Mamatha is going to sing a small prayer for us. I'll just wait until she finishes and then I'll start. Thank you, Mamatha.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Thank you, Mamatha. Good evening to all of you. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I'd like to thank Mr. Ramesh for the kind introduction, and I would like to thank our own sir for a nice introduction to the chapter. We take over from where Meenakshi ji had left us in the second half of the 5th chapter, where the last 3 verses were an introduction to the 6th chapter of Dhyana Yoga. This chapter of Bhagavad Gita is also called Atma Samyama Yoga, which deals with meditation. Next slide, please. This is the concluding chapter of Tvampada, which consists of the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. The part of the Mahavakya, Tat Tvamasi. The Tvampada deals with the physical and mental qualities of an average human being. Lord Krishna introduces Vedantic meditation here because Shravanam is already done by Arjuna in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th chapters of Bhagavad Gita. The definition of meditation is very simple. Mind dwelling on a chosen object is meditation. The next slide, please. This chapter selectively describes meditation practice after one is exposed to the Vedantic teaching. The table in the slide presents the difference between Upasana meditation and the Vedantic meditation. On to the left, you have the Upasana meditation, and on to the right of the table, you have the Vedantic meditation. Now, if one practices meditation after the process of Shravanam and Mananam, then it is called Nididhyasana meditation or Nirguna Ishvara Dhyana. Whereas meditation practice before one exposes oneself to Vedantic teaching is called Upasana meditation or Saguna Ishvara Dhyana. A person who has practiced Upasana meditation has attained Jnana Yogyata. Whereas a person who has gone through the process of Shravanam, which is listening to the scriptures under the guidance of a guru for a length of time, has attained Jnanam. And a person who has gone through Nididhyasana meditation has become a Jnana Nishta. Next slide, please. The 6th chapter is divided into 7 topics for better understanding. Firstly, Bahiranga Sadhanani or general disciplines to be followed throughout the day. Verses 1 to 9 and 6 to 17 cover these aspects. Secondly, Antaranga Sadhanani or specific disciplines to be followed just before the practice of meditation. These are covered under the verses 10 to 15. Thirdly, Dhyana Swarupam, that is the actual process of meditation. These are covered under verses 18 to 20 and 24 to 26. Fourthly, Dhyana Phalam, which is verses 20 to 24 and 27 to 32, which is the benefits of meditation. The 5th one is Dhyana Pratibandha Pariharo, where we see this in verses 33 to 36, which includes the obstacles to meditation and their remedies. The 6th topic is Yoga Brashta in verses 37 to 45. The 7th and the final one is the glory of meditation, which is chapter from verses 46 to 47. Now, there might be some overlap in the verses and the content of these verses, and there might be some repetition, but it is okay as we are going to learn more and more when we repeat things. The verses 1 to 25 will be covered by me, and the verses 25 to 47 will be covered by Mrs. Mamatha Shankar today. Moving on to the next slide. Before we go to the verse proper, we need to understand that what meditation is meant for, and more importantly, what it is not meant for. From here on, whenever I mention meditation, we are meaning Vedantic meditation in this chapter, because chapter 6 deals only with Vedantic meditation. In the table on the slide, we see onto the left, we see what meditation is meant for. Meditation is meant for preparation of the mind, for jnanam and assimilation of knowledge. On the right of the same table, you see that meditation is not meant for moksha, not for attaining jnanam, not for any mystic experience, and not for any Brahman experience. It is not an end in itself, but it is only a means for Brahman experience. Moving on to the Bahiranga Sadhanani, or the general disciplines that one has to follow throughout the day. Starting with the first verse. Anashritaha karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnircha chakriyaha. In this verse, Lord Krishna glorifies the Grihasthashrama. Before we move further, we need to understand the difference between a karmi and a karma yogi. Again, in the slide, it is been mentioned in the table. On to the left is a karmi definition. A person who does an action and is attached to the fruits of the action is called a karmi. Most of us are karmis, but we need to be a karma yogi. What is a karma yogi then? A karma yogi is a person who performs an action with an attitude of Ishvara Arpana Bhavana and Ishvara Prasada Bhavana, which is going to help more and more people. Whatever action he does is going to help more and more people. And he is not attached to the fruits of his action. Whatever are the results, positive or negative, he is not attached to them. Such a person is a karma yogi, and he is the one who develops a stress-free mind. Next slide, please. And this person who develops a stress-free mind is said to be in a state of samatvam. Lord Krishna advises all of us to perform Pancha Mahayagna on a daily basis and always perform any action without expecting the results of that action. And this helps us grow in the path of spirituality. Next slide, please. In the next two verses, Lord Krishna has one question. What entitles a grihastha to be called a sannyasi? When do you call a grihastha as a sannyasi? The answer is, whenever a grihastha is able to renunciate the worry of the future in his mind, only then he is called a real sannyasi. As long as a person has not tackled the problem of samsara, that person cannot come to self-knowledge or the study of self-knowledge. No scriptures prescribe meditation first. Even in the Vedas, they start with the Karma Kanda first. Next slide. In Bhagvadgita also, the meditation starts in chapter 6. And in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, meditation is the 7th step. In the table on to your left in the slide, we see the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita under the headers. Chapter 1 is Arjuna's grief. Chapter 2 is the yoga of knowledge. Chapter 3 is Karma Yoga. Chapter 4 is renunciation of action. Chapter 5 is yoga of true renunciation. And chapter 6 is yoga of meditation or dhyana yoga that we are going to study today. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, on the right of the table, the first chapter, or the first step is yama or restraint. Second is niyama or observance. Third is asana or physical posture. Fourth is pranayama or regulation of breath. Sixth is dharana, focus. The fifth is pratyahara, sense withdrawal. The sixth one is dharana, which is focus. Seventh is dhyana, meditation. Here is the 7th step. And the 8th one is samadhi, which is total absorption. Moving on to the next 2 verses, which are the key verses, which inform us when to switch from karma to renunciation. These verses are important, hence let's try and recite them. Yada hinendriyateshu na karmasvanu sajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudastadochyate uddared atmanatmanam natmanam avasatyayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhur atmaiva ripuratmanaha. In this verse, Lord Krishna mentions for a seeker who is still climbing up yoga, that is sadhaka, action is said to be the means. For the seeker who has attained it, the siddha, inaction or quiescence is said to be the means to attain the highest possibility. The person who is neither interested in the sense objects nor their pursuits That renouncer of all sankalpa or thoughts is said to be the one who has purified his mind, and he is the one who can attain jnana yogyata. Next slide. Lord Krishna talks about our own free will or effort. Here we need to know the difference between fate and free will. In this table, again, we look at the difference between fate and fatalism. On the left, we have a description of fate. Fate is the one of the factors which influences our future. Prarabdha karma or purva karma phala, what we call as our karma, also plays a role. We need to take a balanced view on this aspect. On the right, we have fatalism. This is believing that fate is the only factor which determines our future. The other factor which determines our future is our free will or our self-effort. Our effort improves as our effort improves towards spiritual growth. We see that the intensity of our fate will also decrease. The two arrow marks in the figure make this very clear for us to understand. Therefore, our future is a combination of our fate and our own free will or our self-effort. Here, Lord Krishna says, refine your instruments and integrate your personality. Every organ must be healthy. Take care of your health, both physical and mental. Your own Atma is your true friend and your true enemy. Also, Atma here means the body, mind, sense, intellect complex. Let a man lift himself by his own mind alone. Let him not lower himself. For this mind alone is the friend or enemy of oneself. In the next slide, here Lord Krishna speaks about self-mastery and integration. We can understand this better when we use the kitchen analogy. In the daily use of the LPG cylinder in the kitchen, it can be a friend as well as an enemy, depending on how we handle it. Similarly, when we look at the flowchart here, an LPG cylinder, when properly used, acts as a friend. Similarly, a managed body-mind complex, which is under my control, when I master it, it is a jita. It's a winner. The same LPG cylinder can act as my enemy if I do not use it properly and can burst and cause a fire in the house. That is like a mismanaged body-mind complex, which is not under my control. When uncontrolled, then it is a ajitatma. The next slide, the next verse is also an important one. As I said, this chapter is extremely important. Nowhere in the scriptures, meditation is described so well and in such a lengthy way and in such a great detail. Jitat manaha prashantasya paramatma samahitaha shitoshna sukha dukkeshu tataha pana mana apamanayaho. Here, Lord Krishna emphasizes the need for self-mastery over the mind to get a state of tranquility. He says, in him, Paramatma is clearly evident in heat and cold, pleasure and pain, as well as honor and dishonor. In a calm mind, the focus can more easily shift from the thoughts to the witness of thoughts. How do we test ourselves whether we are progressing in the process of self-mastery in the mind? The answer is by voluntarily choosing practices like fasting, meditation, and once in a way observing silence to see how our mind is doing. In the next slide and the next verse, 6.8, he describes the benefits of jnanam. Here, the two stages of self-knowledge are explained. A disciplined person goes through two stages. Firstly, jnanam, and secondly, vijnanam. In the table below, onto the left, again, you see the features of a person who has jnanam. He says, I am the body. I have consciousness in me. Here, consciousness is taken as a part of the body. On the right are the features of a person who has vijnanam. Here we change and say, I am the consciousness principle, and I have got this body as a temporary instrument of knowledge. Next slide. So a yogi is the person whose mind is satisfied through jnana and vijnana, who is steady and has mastered the sense organs, whose mind is steady and has mastered the sense organs. For him, a lump of earth, a stone, and gold, all are same. In the next verse, 6.9, Lord Krishna talks about samatvam with regards to animate beings. This is that a man of perfection regards all relationships with an equal love. Love and consideration, be it friends or foes, indifferent or neutral, hateful or nearest relations. He discovers essential unity in the perceived diversity and a subtle rhythm in the obvious discord in the world outside. Next slide. In verses 16 and 17, Lord Krishna speaks about self-moderation in eating, sleeping, and activity. The Shastras prescribe dividing the stomach into 4 equal parts. The first 2, that is half the stomach, should be filled with solid food, the third part with water, and the last 1/4 should be empty. When one is no longer hungry but can still eat more, one should stop. One should avoid fasting too much. The one who sleeps too much or the one who does not sleep at all also cannot succeed in meditation. For those people who do not follow these in moderation, meditation is not possible. Next, moderation in activity is emphasized. And also choosing the right field of activity is important. Again, we'll have to go back to thinking of being a karma yogi. By doing so, it leads us to destruction of sorrows, which in turn leads to knowledge of Brahman and destruction of ignorance. In the next slide, we just have completed the verses 1 to 9 and 16 and 17, which tells us about the general disciplines that we need to follow throughout the day. That is Bahiranga Sadhana. So what did we learn over the last 10 minutes? We learned about Karma Yoga, which is the Ishvara Arpana Bhavana and the Ishvara Prasada Bhavana, which leads us to get a state of mind which is called Samatvam, which is a stress-free mind. Then we also spoke about self-grace, where we have Ishvara Krupa, Guru Krupa, and also Shastra Krupa. Then we spoke about self-effort, how important it is, and just not blame everything on our fate. Because if we put in more effort, we can decrease the intensity of the fate. Then we spoke about moderation, both in eating, sleeping, and activity. To sum up, this is what we have learned in the last 10 minutes. So now let's move on to the next slide, where we are going to speak about certain things that we need to do just before the practice of meditation. What are they? We have 8 steps. Don't worry, they're easy. We can learn them very fast. These are to be followed immediately before meditation. First one is desha, place. Second one is kala, time. Third one is asana, proper seat for sitting. Fourth one is condition of the body, that is sharira sthiti. Fifth one is condition of breathing, that's pranayama. Sixth one is condition of the sense organs, that's indriya nigraha. Seventh one is condition of the mind, that is mano nigraha. And the 8th one is condition of the intellect, that is buddhi nishchaya. Next slide. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasastitah ekakiyata chittatma nirashir apparigraha. In this verse, Lord Krishna describes the place and time Lord Krishna advises us to select a place which is quiet, clean, and secluded and spiritually uplifting. Select a time when the mind is sattvic, calm, not rajasic or active, or tamasic or dull. Example, early in the morning or late in the evenings. Once this is done, a yogi should be free from anxiety and greed. That's when the mind can get constantly absorbed in the higher self. In the next slide, Lord Krishna speaks about the seat, the condition of the body and the breathing. The place to sit should be neither too high or too low, too hard or too soft. The seat should be covered by kusha grass, hide and cloth in that order. Sitting posture with the maximum base to the ground should be maintained at all time, as standing causes rajoguna tendency and sleeping causes tamoguna tendency. The condition of the body should be in such a way that the back and neck should be straight and yet relaxed. Now coming to the breathing, breathing can be relaxed or should be relaxed, smooth and rhythmic, with even inhalation and exhalation. The minute you put the body straight, your back straight and your neck straight, the breathing automatically becomes even. In the next verses, next slide, 12 and verse 13, the condition of the sense organs and mind are discussed. Once in the seat, Lord Krishna is advising us as to what the seeker should practice when he's sitting in the seat of meditation. Having the body steadfast in posture, one should employ his mind and intellect in the process of divine contemplation and meditation. The main instrument of focus here is to make the mind single-pointed. In verse 13, again, Lord Krishna reinforces the importance of posture, especially to focus on the eyes. They should be partially closed, focusing on the tip of the nose. Meditation is to be practiced with the purpose of purification of internal organs. Meditation is done with the mind, not posture. This is only a suggestion, says Swami Paramathanandaji. Next slide, moving on to verse 14 of the 6th chapter. Prashantatma vigatabir brahmachari rate stitaha manas samyamamachitto yukta asita matparaha. In this verse, we learn about becoming a mental sannyasi or brahmachari. How is it possible? When we sit to meditate, lot of negative experiences, worries, pain, insults, failures come in our thoughts. Surrender all these to the Lord, at least temporarily during meditation. Thanking him for all these experiences will lead to inner growth. Submit the anxiety of the future and the worries of the past. Forget all your relationships temporarily. Forget that you are a daughter, mother, mother-in-law, father, brother. Forget your professions. The mind becomes peaceful. To the relaxed mind, free of disturbances, the present is now available fully for meditation. Now think of me as the supreme goal, says Lord Krishna. Moving on to the next verse. Yunjan evam sadatmana yogi niyata manasaha shantim nirvana paramam matsanstam adhigacchati. This verse deals with the condition of the intellect. Here, the perception of the Lord differs depending on the level of the spiritual progress of the student or the adhikari. Here we have noted down with some progressive arrow marks, the initial person, the Manda adhikari, the initial student looks at the Lord in the form of Ishtadevata, the one who approves whatever he wants. And such an adhikari does Ekarupa Dhyana. He uses God for his selfish purposes. The next level of progression, a Madhyama Adhikari, looks at the Lord in the form of Vishwarupa Ishvara. He does Aneka Rupa Dhyana. And Uttama Adhikari, where he realizes that whatever I am praying to, that particular God is the one who is in me, who is able to give me that permanent peace and happiness that I'm looking for. He is the one whom we call an Uttamadhikari. He looks at Lord in the form of the formless Ishvara and does Arupa Dhyana. When one meditates on the formless God, the division between the meditator and the meditated disappears. The only one and the unchanging and the permanent is the Lord. Therefore, peace derived from meditation of the Lord is permanent. You get permanent peace, security, and happiness. This peace is Jivan Mukti. Once the meditator dies, this Jivan Mukti culminates into Videha Mukti, and therefore there is no more rebirth. Next slide. Now we move on to Dhyana Swarupam. So we just finished Antaranga Sadhanani, which are specific disciplines to maintain just before meditation. What does Dhyana Swarupam mean? Once we sit down with all the specific disciplines that we need to meditate, then what are the steps to be followed in meditation, especially Vedantic meditation? These are, the first step is called Dharana, the next step is called Dhyana, and the last step is called Samadhi. Dharana means bringing the focus of thoughts from this Anatma world to the Atma. Secondly, Dhyana is retaining the focus of thoughts on the Atma. And thirdly, Samadhi is getting absorbed in the thoughts of the Atma. The first two, that is Dharana and Dhyana, will require will or self-effort, whereas the third one does not require. Next slide. In verse 18, Lord Krishna describes the characteristic features of a Jnani and an Ajnani. On the table, on the slide, onto the left, the features of a Jnani are mentioned as a person who is free from longing for desirable objects. If any desires are there, that is due to prarabdha, karma, they might arise, but he is not bound to that. Since his fullness or completeness does not depend on its fulfillment. On the right of the table, we see the features of a person who is an Ajnani. As a person who is seeking and longing for desirable objects, he is bound to the same object as it gives him security and happiness, failing to recognize the fullness which is his very own nature. When such a Jnani with a restrained mind sits to meditate, he is the one absorbed in the Atma. Next slide. Verse 19. Yatha deepo nivatasto nengate sopama yogino yatha chittasya yunjato yogamatmanaha. This verse describes a true yogi who has mastered the art of controlling the mind by dhyana on Atma. Here, Lord Krishna uses the metaphor of lamp. When a lamp is kept in an open place, it flickers because of disturbing breeze. The direction in which the lamp will flicker is unpredictable. In meditation, our thoughts are like a flickering lamp. As we try to keep our thought on the object of meditation, other thoughts come and disturb this thought. We tend to drift, but if the flame is protected by enclosure, then the flame is steady. In a similar manner, we need to have vairagya, which is detachment, and bhakti, which is devotion, as enclosures to protect the steady flame, which corresponds to nirvikalpa samadhi, which can be obtained by dhyana on Atma. Next slide. Now we are going to speak about dhyana phalam, or benefits of meditation. When we do the meditation, what do we expect in a person? Firstly, transformation of the personality of the person, freedom from raga and dvesha, that is attachment and dislikes, and finally, jivan mukti. To understand these verses better, verses 20 to 23, we need to know the difference between Savikalpa Samadhi and Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Again, in this table on the left, we see Savikalpa Samadhi, and the right, we have Nirvikalpa Samadhi. In Savikalpa Samadhi, here, the flow of similar thoughts of Atma are seen. Here, effort is there, and there's a division also there between the meditator and the meditated. On the right of the table, we see features of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Here, thoughts are there. Meditator is there. Because of the absorption, they are not felt separately. There is union between the two. And self-forgetfulness is there. And so no effort is needed. So this is not a part of Dhyana Swarupa. So that is why we say that this is a part of Dhyana Swarupa, Phalam. When we get Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that's a part of Dhyana Phalam. In the next slide, slide 29, Lord Krishna defines Nirvikalpa Samadhi and gives 7 definitions of Samadhi. Again, these are easy to remember. I think this we need to focus for the next 5 minutes, and we'll be finishing this topic. Firstly is Chitta Uparamanam, that is total tranquility of mind. Secondly, Atma Darshanam, perceives Atma in the mind as the witness of thoughts. Thirdly, Atyantika Sukham, that is limitless happiness. Fourthly, Tattva Nishta, always abiding in Atma Swarupa. Fifthly, the greatest benefit, that is Atyanta Labham. Sixthly, not shaken by greatest tragedy, Atyantika Dukkha Nivritti. And the last one is dissociation from association with sorrow, Dukkha Samyoga Viyoga. In the next slide, verse 20, the first 2 definitions, that is tranquility of mind and Atma Darshanam, which is perceiving Atma in the mind as the witness of thoughts, are discussed. Tranquility is obtained by withdrawing the mind from the worldly roles. All roles should be discarded during meditation. Only then mind remains calm and enjoys silence. The mind is quiet because of Vedantic thoughts, which is possible because of Guru and Shastras, Shravanam and Mananam. Atma resides in the mind as the witness of our thoughts. One identifies with Atma and witnesses the thoughts. This is Atma Darshanam. During Nididhyasana, knowledge transfer becomes powerfully registered, and such a person is called a Jnana Nishta. Stay with that. Moving on to the next verse. Next slide. This verse describes the 3rd and 4th definitions of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is limitless happiness, and Tattva Nishta, that is always abiding in Atma Swarupa. Now, all of us are wondering, what is this Ananda? Is it not different from the experiential sense pleasures, which are finite in terms of place and time? But this Ananda that we experience is Ananda born of knowledge that one was Purna before Samadhi, during Samadhi, and after Samadhi. Knowledge, true knowledge, does not change before or after Samadhi. This fulfillment or Purnatvam is Atyantika Sukham. In the next word, Tattva Nishta, the word Tattva means Atma in this context. The one who remains in this absorption and never forgets his true nature, who does not deviate into Anatma even in the midst of intense worldly transaction, he is a Sthita Prajna. Being in this permanent state of Samadhi is Tattva Nishta. In the next slide, verse 22, the verse deals with the 5th and 6th definitions of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, they are the greatest benefit and not shaken by the greatest tragedy. Purnatvam is the highest gain or accomplishment in front of which all other gains are insignificant. Remaining in this Atmanishta or Tattvanishta, one is not shaken or shocked by the worst tragedy in life. He knows everything in this world is subject to arrival and departure. Since he has no tragedy in life, he attains Atyanta Dukkha Nivritti. Next slide. Verse 23 describes the seventh definition and the last definition of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is Dukkha Samyoga Vyogam, that is, dissociation from association with sorrow. Here, Lord Krishna emphasizes the need to practice this yoga regularly, tirelessly, and with a firm mind, where we need to dissociate from association with sorrow. This is the final benefit of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the state of disunion from union with all sorrow. So we end here. The next slide is the summary slide of what all we've learned so far. So we learned the general disciplines to be practiced throughout the day, the specific disciplines to be practiced just before we sit for meditation, the method of meditation, what do we do when we sit, and the benefits of meditation. So in this slide, we're just going to learn a few of them, the few points that we have take-home messages. The amount of knowledge assimilated is more important than the amount acquired. Shravanam replayed mentally is Nididhyasanam, and this is Vedantic meditation. Vedantic meditation is for assimilating the knowledge gained under the teacher. Knowledge is like food. It can nourish only when assimilated. Example is, we eat a banana, but if you want to get the nourishment out of that banana, the carbohydrate, protein, and the fat content of the banana has to be absorbed, and you have to see a particular change in your body in terms of the growth or in terms of the nutrition which has been absorbed into your system. So it is like that. Fifthly, meditation does not lead to mukti. Only knowledge gained under a qualified guru leads to mukti. Dwelling upon this teaching is called Dharana Dhyana Samadhi, that culminates into Dhyana Phalam, which is of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The next slide is continuation of the summary, few more points. Seventh one is the infinite Ananda is possible only if it is present here and now. This, our own nature, is not gained, but revealed when Atma Jnana removes self-imposed sorrow that it covers. Eighth one, Samadhi is dissociation from association with sorrow. Ninth one, every sorrow belongs to the body, mind, and world. That is Anatma, Prapancha. None of them belongs to one's true nature, which is Atma. That is equal to God. 10th one, when one hands over all sorrows to Anatma, in his true nature. 11th one, Lord Krishna advises one to practice meditation with perseverance to attain Samadhi. Regularity is needed. The last one, information from Gita is not the primary objective. We can all spend hours reading Gita, but that is not the primary objective. Transformation is the primary objective. Thank you all for the patient listening. Now I'm handing over for the beautiful next half, which is going to be taken over by Mrs. Mamatha Shankar. Thank you. Thank you. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, Dr. Roopa, for a beautiful presentation. Lord Krishna continues his discourse, elaborating on Vedantic meditation in the verses 24 to 47 on chapter 6. The topics that are covered in these set of verses are Vedantic meditation and its prerequisites. What is the actual process of Vedantic meditation? Associated benefits of this meditation. Fourth, obstacles and remedies to the meditation. Fifth, Yoga Brashta and its ramifications. Finally, the sixth one, re-emphasizing the benefits of meditation. In this whole chapter, Krishna is discussing Nididhyasanam, known as Vedantic meditation. Vedantic meditation in general means dwelling on the Atma or the self and its features or attributes. The actual self-knowledge has to take place only at the time of systematic study of the scriptures. Self-knowledge helps us to understand that I am not the limited body-mind. I am the all-pervading eternal Atma. It is the very life principle, and the Atma is the same in all living beings. Nididhyasanam or Vedantic meditation is assimilation of this teaching and hence relevant and meaningful only after the study of Vedanta. Our second question is, what is Vedantic meditation and its process? In verses 24 to 26, Krishna talks in detail about what we should be doing during the meditation. In 24, Krishna re-emphasizes on the process of Vedantic meditation. Krishna provides a three-step approach to control the mind drifting into worldly thoughts and train the mind to focus on meditation and on object of meditation alone. First, do not entertain worldly thoughts in the form of likes or dislikes to enter the mind. Second, don't allow thought buildup, that is, nip it at the seed level as soon as it enters the mind. Third, be aware that sense organs are gateways for worldly thoughts and refrain from entertaining these thoughts. Verse 25 goes deeper into the topic of meditation and focusing attention on one thought. That is, I am the self, the witness consciousness. However, sudden shift in focus from worldly thoughts to the subtlest, I am the self, is a difficult task. So Krishna says, one should gradually withdraw the mind from all the objects. The object can be categorized as, that is, the objects can be categorized as external world, our own physical body and mind. Negating Panchakoshas enables gradual shift in focus to the self. That is, we start with something that is obvious and end with the subtlest. Like we become aware of the world, withdraw or negate from it, and move on to physical body and be aware of it. Withdraw, being aware that I am not the body, and then systematically go to Pranamaya, and similarly Manomaya, that is the mind, that has thoughts in the form of desires, emotions, etc. Then intellect, Vijnanamaya, then blankness, the Anandamaya. Then finally establish yourself in the self. In the process, varieties of emotions distract us, like depression, fear, anger, hatred, anxiety, jealousy, so on. In Vedantic meditation, I do not try to control my emotions. I try to objectify them. I try to stand aloof from my emotions and see that they do not belong to me. We have to become aware that the emotions are expressed as thoughts in the mind, but I am not the thoughts nor the mind. Before the thoughts arrive, I am. During the presence of the thoughts, I am. The thoughts subside. Thereafter also, I am. Therefore, I am not even the thoughts. I am the witness consciousness of the thoughts. That would mean the very thought process, the very perception has to change. This requires both time and effort, and the determination comes with conviction of the intellect, which has got the willpower or resolve to sustain the spiritual journey. Let's consider another example. Any pleasant experience we might have during meditation can be attributed to quietness of the mind during meditation. That experience also belongs to the mind. It is as much a sensory pleasure as the ice cream is. Ice cream is pleasant at the time of eating, and the experience is temporary in nature. Similarly, in meditation, you feel pleasant until it ends. What we are talking about is the witness of that pleasant condition which was there before meditation, which witness is there after meditation and also during meditation. We have to own up and be aware of the witness consciousness, the Atma, which is witnessing ordinary and extraordinary experiences of the mind. Vedantic meditation is dwelling or abiding in the thought of Atma and its features and Atma alone. We should meditate as any of the following. I am the consciousness or Atma different from the body. I am the consciousness pervading the body. I am the consciousness which goes beyond the body, and I am formless, not contaminated, and ever pure. Therefore, Vedantic meditation is not thoughtlessness meditation. It is a meditation where the thought is centered on the Atma or the self. Only then the meditation has spiritual benefit in the path to discover the self, which is our essential nature that gives us the ultimate bliss. The verse 26 is one of the most practical shlokas on meditation. It is quite natural for the mind to get distracted for various reasons and become restless and wander from one thought to another. That becomes more obvious during meditation. Krishna elaborates on how to discipline the wandering mind in this verse. Krishna says, once we realize the mind is distracted, we have to bring it back to the thought of the self. The meditator has to do this again and again, each time the mind drifts away. It is the very nature of the mind to wander towards thoughts about objects, people, and situations that we have given importance to. Regular practice helps us diminish our importance towards these thoughts. We will have to do this repeatedly. Then slowly, the mind's attachment towards the self will start increasing, and simultaneously its detachment from the world will also increase. As this happens, it will become easier and easier to meditate. But in the beginning, we must be prepared for the hurdles involved in disciplining the mind. And our third question is about what are the benefits of Vedantic meditation. In the verses 27 to 32, Krishna re-emphasizes benefits of the Vedantic meditation. Scriptural study helps us to gain the knowledge of the self or Atma, the core of the Vedantic teaching, which is our very nature. Atma and God are one and the same, and Atma is eternal, all-pervading. This self-knowledge is called Gnanam. Seeker who has this self-knowledge is called a Gnani or a Yogi. Benefits of the knowledge is freedom from anxiety, fear, frustration, so on, or the benefit is permanent security, peace, happiness. In other words, moksha or liberation. Obstacle to reap the benefits of knowledge is our habitual ways of looking at ourselves, that is, identifying with body, mind, and ego. In other words, as a physical or emotional person with strong likes or dislikes, experiencing various emotions like sadness, happiness, anger, so on. Vedantic meditation or Nididhyasanam helps us to remove this block to reap the benefits of the knowledge, which is permanent security, peace, happiness. Benefits that we get from Vedantic meditation are, firstly, it gives us a new perception. To understand that better, let us look at an example. When we look at the sky during daytime, stars, although existent, appear non-existent as they are overpowered by the light of the sun. Similarly, the problems associated with identifying one's self with their own body identification, like aging, sickness, emotional ups and downs, so on, don't go away, but they are overshadowed by new perception, which is discovery of the Atma or God within us. Assimilation of the self-knowledge has to happen to such a level that it transforms the core personality. Perception or attitude towards world or people undergo a healthy change. The meditator or the seeker will be at peace with themselves, not because of the situations that the world has to offer to them, but in spite of the situations, pleasant or unpleasant, they are at peace or undisturbed. Two factors influence to bring in this transformation: regular practice of Vedantic meditation and giving quality time for the meditation, to change the habitual ways of thinking by reorienting the thought process in the mind from habitual worldly thoughts to thoughts centered on Atma. Unless you're willing to spend time on this, there is no way of assimilation. Just like in construction, process of curing is used to make the wall stronger, that is pouring water. The more the water is poured and gets absorbed in the wall or roofing, the more well set it is. Therefore, it is important to spend quality time to be absorbed in assimilating the knowledge. It is then never forgotten. The indication that the assimilation of knowledge is happening is when I don't forget the teaching or the knowledge during my day-to-day transactions. Krishna says a yogi or meditator who practices Vedantic meditation regularly has a mind free from unhealthy thought processes in the form of anxiety, fear, jealousy, so on, enjoys the highest unconditional peace achieved by subsiding the tamasic related thoughts of delusion or confusion and disturbing thoughts like kama, krodha, lobha, so on. Swamiji says that like fire is permanently hot without any conditions, the seeker or gnani will be at peace, enjoys contentment, which is born out of the knowledge of I am always full or purna. The I is not the physical or emotional or intellectual I, it is owning up to the higher I, that is I, the Atma, I am Purnaha, and that is my essential nature. They take actions where it has to be and accept where it is choiceless. Such a gnani or seeker has discovered the self or the Atma. The next benefit is vision of equality as discussed in verse 29. Chanting this verse, Sarvabhutasthamatmanam Sarvabhutani Chatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. Lord Krishna says, Yoga Yuktatma. Yoga Yuktatma means a gnani whose mind has reached Vedantic saturation through Vedantic meditation. Such a gnani is called Gnananishta. They have fully assimilated the knowledge, dwelling upon the Atma all the time and have a transformation. And the transformation is Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. That is, even when they interact with the people or doing their regular activities, they do not lose the sight of Atma, the essential nature of everyone. Not that they can physically see it. They can appreciate the inherent all-pervading self or Atma in all living beings with different name and forms. They can certainly see physical, intellectual, and emotional differences in living beings. But in and through the differences, they don't lose the sight of that one Atma. They perceive the Atma as residing in every living being, just as we realize the presence of invisible space in every hall, every room, every pot, every cup, so on. And they perceive all living beings in Atma. Example to understand this better would be, we just talked about realizing space in every object. Another way of looking at it is, all the objects are in one space. Similarly, Gnani sees Atma in every being and every being in the Atma. In short, one's self in all and all in one's self. The next benefit or the third benefit of the meditation is greatest being a greatest bhakta of God. Krishna conveys in verse 30 that highest form of bhakti is possible only through assimilation of self-knowledge. The appreciation of all-pervading Atma or self everywhere is realization of God everywhere. In other words, awareness of Atma or self is being aware of God. That is the highest form of bhakti. Krishna says that the gnani who sees Atma in every being sees God everywhere. Atma is the very life principle in every being. So the very life principle in every being is God. Atma and God are one entity. There is no second thing. And God is eternal, all-pervading, which means that God is ever present for a self-realized yogi or a gnani and never lost to them. The fourth benefit is internal transformation. Greatest bhakta of Lord, whatever is their profession or regardless of whatever their responsibility is, perceives the self or God everywhere all the time. This is an internal transformation. Such a Gnani, Krishna says, ever lives in me, that is the Lord, which is none other than the all-pervading Atma or self, through a conscious awareness of the self. The highlight of the verse is internal transformation is more important than the external transformation, like rituals and so on. Rituals, however, will aid the seeker to focus the thoughts on the Lord with form or formless the self, which definitely accelerates the spiritual progress. The fifth benefit is universal compassion, universal love. Sri Krishna concludes his discourse on the actual process of meditation and its associated benefits. He echoes a golden rule in this verse: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Krishna says that Gnanis who see all-pervading Atma or the self in others sees no difference between their self and other beings. This Sarvatra Samadarshanam or equality of vision of Gnanis gives rise to universal love, universal compassion. They treat the joy and sorrows of all living beings as their own. They will never hurt anyone physically, mentally, or verbally. In other words, the Gnani puts himself in the other person's shoes. He experiences joy when others are happy. He experiences sorrow when others feel sad, but very well aware of the scenario that I am not the limited body mind. I am the self or Atma is unaffected by any of these. I am always fulfilled or Purnaha. So far, we have been talking about the benefits. We will now move on to our next question. In the verses 33 and 34, Arjuna himself, after fully understanding what Krishna is telling, has a doubt that many of us can relate with, which leads to our fourth question, that is obstacles and remedies for Vedantic meditation. Arjuna tells Krishna, it is possible to understand the teaching taught to him by the Lord, that is dwelling upon the Atma, my real nature, or remain established in the knowledge of the self, which is ever uniform, ever the same in all beings, which means dwelling on I am Atma or witness consciousness that is changeless or eternal. Body, mind, everything changes. They are limited in existence. They are all objects. I am the witness of all of them. But Arjuna's concern is it is not possible to retain the knowledge or remain established in the knowledge. Therefore, Arjuna's question to Lord Krishna is about wandering mind and challenges associated with it. Arjuna says to Krishna, the mind is so wandering in nature. It hops from one thought to another effortlessly. Controlling the mind is as difficult as to harness the wind. Mind is strong. It can even conquer the intellectual capability, has strong hold on the external world. It is firm and is capable of affecting other sense organs as well, and requests Krishna to guide him. Based on the level of understanding the scriptures, seekers can be categorized into various levels as depicted in the slide. Scriptures highlight some of the challenges one encounters for Vedantic meditation. They are dullness or sleepiness of the mind, wandering mind, inactive mind or a mind in a stunned state, and a mind which experiences pleasure only during meditation. Arjuna specifically talks about only wandering mind. So Krishna is presenting solution to Arjuna's problem, which is wandering mind, in the next two verses. Krishna acknowledges, yes, it is difficult to discipline the highly fickle, wayward, and outgoing mind, but not impossible. He says we can control mind by abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa is practice, systematic repetition in training the mind. Mind can dwell upon anything without distraction if only the mind has got interest in it. Therefore, focus on any object in any field requires interest on that object, which requires developing an understanding of the value associated with it. And you know the value by trying to understand its superiority or greatness. And this is called Viveka Abhyasa, practice by discriminating what is the right thing to do. Therefore, a seeker in the spiritual pursuit has to practice with an understanding to use the knowledge obtained in scriptures to realize the immense value our Shastras can offer, which is permanent security, peace, happiness, and develop interest in our Shastras, its values, and dwell upon the Shastras. Shastras bring to our awareness that the body, mind, all worldly objects are all changing and perishable. All-pervading, changeless God is not anywhere outside. The Lord is not different from me, not away from myself. It is only getting covered up because of worldly thoughts and activities. Discovering God is the only permanent security, peace, happiness. This the seeker should be able to assimilate and practice it regularly and make it our topmost priority in life. This repeated practice helps in developing vairagya or detachment. Vairagya means reducing raga dvesha, that is likes, dislikes, or attachment and aversion. This helps in reducing dependence on the worldly sensory pleasures. Dwelling upon Shastras help us to develop devotion to God or channelize our interest from materialistic world dependence to devotion to God, which helps in the path to realizing Atma. Arjuna's question around the difficulty of controlling the mind and Sri Krishna's response have been covered in the verses 33 to 36, which we just discussed. Purification of mind, studying and reflection of the scriptures, assimilation of the teachings, even for a sincere seeker with intense desire to attain liberation, it takes a lot of time. Vairagya or detachment from the world is a requirement to attain the ultimate spiritual goal. Without Vairagyam, scripture cannot be assimilated. And without assimilation, we cannot get the ultimate benefit, moksha. So Vairagyam has a very important place in scriptures. Taking all this into account, Arjuna's pessimism with regard to the attainment of liberation in this birth itself leads us to our question number 4, which is Yoga Brashta and its ramifications in the verses 37 to 39. Seekers who fail to attain liberation in the present birth in spite of noble, sincere effort are called Yoga Brashta. Arjuna's questions to Lord Krishna for clarifications are, first, what happens to a seeker who is sincere, faithful, and put effort in the spiritual sadhanas, but the effort is not sufficient due to various obstacles or reasons, so is unable to reach the ultimate goal, liberation. And obstacles can be any of the 3 types, that is supernatural forces, or from the surroundings, like unable to find a proper guru, or family or work demands more time, or due to our own limitations like illness, lack of interest, so on. Next question is, what happens to a seeker who achieves neither spiritual nor material success? That is, those who left karma or actions in the pursuit of knowledge, but due to incomplete effort for unavoidable reasons could not complete the spiritual journey, are deprived of punyam, the result of noble actions, and moksha, the result of knowledge. Arjuna wanted to know if they are going to lose on both sides and perish or weakened, that is, get attracted to sensory pleasures or immoral things and become a non-entity. Just like the cloudlet that is helplessly scattered and eventually disappeared by winds and becomes a non-entity. From verses 40 to 45, Krishna gives elaborate and optimistic answer to Arjuna's questions. He says, there is no downfall for a seeker in the spiritual path doing scriptural studies. It is a noble action that accumulates punyam. Even listening to Gita is a noble action, which Krishna called in the 4th chapter as Gnana Yajna. Then next, seeker who is Yoga Brashta in the present lifetime will be reborn in an illustrious family that is ideal for spiritual sadhana, conducive to do service-oriented work that gives more purity to the mind and more relevant qualifications to pursue spiritual studies, followed by Vedantic meditation. Next, once spiritual teaching or thoughts put in the mind, the spiritual habits are so powerful they can never be destroyed. The seeker's spiritual journey will start from where they had left in the earlier birth, that is, spiritual maturity which they had acquired in the previous birth, including qualifications, amount of viveka, intensity of vairagyam, the mind will discover as they grow. In other words, spiritually evolved person of this birth is a yoga brashta of the previous birth. Then, next one, they show natural inclination to spirituality, not get attracted to materialistic goals, which is refined through many births. Hence, spiritual journey will be faster and less effort is required to attain gnanam and then liberation. Chanting the verse 46 before we enter into our last question. Tapasvibhyodhiko yogi gnanibhyopi matodhikaha karmibhyaschadhiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Our last question, re-emphasizing the benefits of meditation. In verses 46 and 47, Krishna revisits the topic on meditation and concludes the chapter 6 on Dhyana Yoga. There are 4 types of seekers, also known as yogis, which has been talked about in this verse. Tapasvi, who is a seeker committed to Upasana Yoga, worship of God with form. Danis, seekers who gained self-knowledge through scriptural study. Karmis, in the context of this verse, he is a karma yogi, whose actions are dedicated to Lord without expecting any personal gain. Dhyana yogi is a Vedantic meditator committed to Vedantic meditation. Krishna says, among all the seekers, the Vedantic meditator is the greatest one, as they are at the threshold to reaching the destination, the ultimate goal of liberation. Therefore, Krishna says to Arjuna, in turn to all of us, Tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Therefore, Arjuna, be a Vedantic meditator. That means don't stop at mere learning the scriptures or mere listening to scriptures. Spend some time to recollect, revisit, think, assimilate what has been taught to develop the vision of equanimity or Samadarshana, where one sees oneself in all and all in one's self. Sri Krishna concludes this chapter in the next shloka. Krishna says, the yogi or seeker who meditates on me, the Lord, that is, meditate upon the Lord as the Atma or the very self, not as God with a name and form, with Shraddha or faith, that is, the mind totally absorbed in God or self, with great devotion, is the greatest Vedantic meditator or yogi of all the yogis, and says, Sahame yukta tamaha mataha. That is, this is my teaching or my perspective. The last verse 47 is the seed verse for the topic of the next 6 chapters, which is on bhakti or devotion. As I come to the end of the presentation of last set of verses, I would like to conclude with a few key takeaways. Vedantic meditator, that is closest to the ultimate goal moksha and is the greatest yogi of all the yogis. The core Vedantic teaching in the path to ultimate goal is self, which is all-pervading and eternal. Self and God are the same, which is my very nature, and it is the same in all beings. Vedantic meditation is assimilation of the teaching, of this teaching. Factors that influence the assimilation is regular practice and investing quality time and effort. Main benefits of Vedantic meditation are perception of one's self in all and all in one's self, resulting in universal compassion and love. Obstacle to meditation is distracted or fleeting mind. Remedy is abhyasa and vairagya, that is, practice and dispassion. In the end, I would like to leave you with an apt thought, and I quote, Vedantic meditation is not about having yet another new strategy of self-help plan, but rather providing a framework in which to see yourself more clearly. Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavadgitatsu Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Dhyana Yogo Nama Shashtodhyayah. Hari Om. Thank you, sir, and thank you, the Ancient School of Wisdom group, for giving us the opportunity to give the presentation. And thank you, Ramesh, for your kind words in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ji. That was really wonderful.
Sajani ma'am, you're on mute.
Now I think you can hear me. I want to thank both of you for this excellent presentation. It was really wonderful in such